I want to start by thanking, first of all, our colleagues from the OPTAA, from OPESP, from OPTA, and I have also had a chance to meet with our colleagues from SEIU. Thank you for these messages of partnership, of healing. I heard the word of a productive school year, of really naming our collective efficacy and the nested systems that we're working in. I am so excited to be here with you this morning, and let me tell you why. So I'm excited to be here with you for a number of reasons. First, we're in a community here in Oak Park that is known in the region for really taking a forward approach to equity. If you are from this area, you've probably heard of Oak Park. I know I had before coming here, as a place that has been intentional in the past about its vision. And I think while there's always opportunities to revisit, to critique, to advocate further, it's important that we're in a place where there is groundwork and precedence for the institutionalizing of equity that needs to be how we counter the institutionalized racism that we see in our country and in our systems. This is a huge strength for us as we go forward in the work ahead. And I think this idea that our actions are reflected in our beliefs is really important. It's not actually what we say, it's what we do. And we're in a place that has done some things. So, the next reason that I'm excited to be here is because we have big vision partners in Oak Park. You know, there's only so much that a school district and schools and teachers and staff can do on our own, but we are not alone. We have the village, we have a great park district, we have a township, we have a library system, we have a districts, other regional districts in the area. And I pulled these quotes off of their websites just as an example of the really aspirational and big visions that we have in our colleagues and agency partners when we come together across all these different strengths to really lock arms around what the experience is of young people in our community. A lot is possible, and I am grateful to be in partnership, for all of us to be in partnership with these organizations. So I'd also say we are a good match, you and me. So here's a picture. This is actually, I took a picture, you can see this, actually a real old newspaper from 2012. So back in 2012, I had just joined U46 as the Chief of Equity and Social Justice. And it was pretty controversial, the position, because there weren't a lot of positions that had the title equity in them at that time. But what's important here is when I made the presentation to the board, the focus and the way that I had come to frame the work of the Chief of Equity and Social Justice was around universal design. So here's the opening quote of that article. And so as we kick off this year, what a joy for me to come here and to know that universal design for learning, this idea that how we design instruction and how we organize the system is a driving area of work already for District 97, is another reason why I know that we're a good match. So while it has been wonderful, I just gave my 60-day report to the Board of Education, to President Jung and others on Tuesday of last week. Or was it this week? Oh yeah, it was last week. Okay, Tuesday of last week. We have also needed to organize quickly around what are those district-wide priority work streams. Now, there was already existing great work going on. And so this is actually was an effort to organize those different streams of work into 3 priority areas. And that's what I'd like to talk about here today. So when we look at those 3 priority areas, one is around being curious. The second is around being safe and healthy. And third, being a learning designer. Let's talk about each one of them. In terms of being curious, this is about co-creating our district culture, really thinking about who it is that we want to be and how we function with one another. I think this, the Simon Sinek video that Hannah and Larry shared is right on. What are our visions for ourselves and how are we walking our talk every day? We'll talk a little bit more about that in the next slide, but this is about how we treat each other and the kind of commitments we make to one another. In terms of being safe and healthy, there are underneath this body of work, underneath this priority, 3 work streams. One is around really safe schools in a physical and virtual way. And I can tell you from my experience this morning, we do have good lockdown systems so that not, that we've got good lockdown systems in terms of our virtual safety. And that's really important. I know that the physical safety of our schools, that's on all of our minds right now, our families, ourselves. And so really thinking about our plan for having physically and virtually safe schools. Second, of course, is around COVID mitigations and making sure that we have a good preventative plan as well as a plan for testing and reporting and making sure we're keeping the community safe in a way that is in keeping with the guidance that we are getting from our federal, local health departments. And then finally, being a learning designer. And although we think of this, especially in the work of classrooms and instructional leaders, it is actually relevant for all of us. Certainly at the most basic fundamental student level, how are we innovating for student-owned learning? How are we making sure that students aren't just at the receiving end of what we have planned for them, but are really owning that process? And I think, again, this reference to collective teacher efficacy, to the partners to the left and the right of us, are really important because it's about how do we be learning designers with and for each other for the purpose of serving our students. So I would like to take a deeper look at each one of these. So in terms of being curious, here's what we need to ask ourselves. What is our culture? What do we want it to be? And how might we co-create to bridge that gap? And the kinds of things we need to do as a district team include developing some shared agreements and protocols of how we function together and connecting with each other. And also when we connect, and even when it gets bumpy, learning to debate with integrity. And we should think about what that means and how it looks amongst us so that it can look that way and feel that way in our classrooms as well. How might we commit to being a radically inclusive and participatory school district? Things we need to think about: centering the most impacted communities, whatever it is that we're thinking about, working around. How do we make sure that it isn't based on what we think should happen, but rather also very responsive to the most impacted voices in that particular work? This idea of radically inclusive and participatory school district, we also want to create kind of smart ways to engage in two-way communication. And I think this is something that our communities are really calling for as well. So let's move to the next area, this idea of being safe and healthy. So we mentioned school, physical and virtual safety. So what are those baseline district safety expectations and how are we all getting on the same page about them? So for example, how visitors are greeted and checked when they come into our building to make sure that they're safe and supposed to be there? How do we make sure everyone knows that we don't prop doors open, that we have our badges on, so that we know that we're supposed to be in the building, baseline safety expectations. And then when there are behavior or other incidents, what is our response and communication plan so that we are clear and aligned in that work? In terms of COVID mitigation, really making sure that we have a cross-functional planning team that is looking at the new guidance as it comes out, and it drops every few days here, new guidance in this continuing evolving situation, and really leaning on the cross-functional team that is looking at the information and the data and the guidance and working collaboratively with the Oak Park Health Department. So we make sure we have a strong plan that balances the very different perspectives and the very different data sometimes that we're getting from different places, but has at its core a fundamental commitment to make sure that we are all safe as a community. And then also related to being safe and healthy is this focus on student mental health and well-being. Here we think about our universal approaches to PBIS Tier 1 fidelity. How are we making sure we're really leaning into all that we know about the kinds of climates and cultures that make schools psychologically safe, and that when things happen, we have targeted strategies for a restorative response. These are all things that we have the infrastructure for and a lot of strengths in these areas. And so really leaning into that is what we're talking about here. And in all of these areas, there's a lot of depth of strength and assets and resources that we already have going on within the district. We also then want to kind of build out and collaborate strategically with key partners in Oak Park so that we can leverage their expertise and efficiency as we optimize service to the community. There are certain places, the Oak Park Health Department, the Oak Park Police Department, the township with its resources and strengths around mental health. These are all partnerships that we want to leverage. And finally, in the area of being a learning designer, we have kind of these 3 grade bands that we are organizing around. And in this first one, we really want to charge ourselves to say, what does it look like and how is it that we can commit to every early learning student being in love with literacy and able to read, speak, and listen and write at grade level by 3rd grade? What does that look like? And for our 3rd through 5th grade students, when that agency is located within themselves, where they know what those ELA and math standards are that they are working on and learning, planned backwards from where they need to be when they start middle school. How do we design around that ownership? And same thing here for our 6th through 8th grade students, when they know what they need to be able to do and achieve by 9th grade based on those standards. How might we equip them with their own standards learning map and engage them in owning that process? So I want to just name that we already know a lot about how to create this kind of core instruction, and it happens across the district, across the country every single day. It's our opportunity to really challenge ourselves. How do we take it off the page and put it together in new ways? So again, as that video and as Hannah and Larry's message referenced, really collective teacher efficacy. We know that there is just nothing that has an effect size on student achievement like a group of adults coming together and knowing that they can serve students well. That's what collective teacher efficacy is, and that's what we need to have going on. I want to also note that while the research base is focused on collective teacher efficacy, we in District 97 want to kind of break out a new a new focus, which is around collective employee efficacy in our district. So that is to say, our staff in every role, our custodians, the food service staff, our front office staff that welcomes families every day, our teaching assistants in the classroom, when we all lock arms around student achievement and around serving our students well, we're going to have knockout results. And that's the way we need to think about our work, is all adults with our arms locked around student success. In the classroom, we have the Danielson framework for teaching and universal design for learning. Let's take these things and make them real every single day. And while we know a lot, there's also a lot of space to create new visions around how do we really engage families and communities in partnership with us, so that those standards, when that agency and that understanding is located in standards, then learning can happen in very strategic and deliberate ways, way outside of the school day. And so this is another area where we want to kind of think differently and push ourselves to develop new ways of serving our students. So here's what really matters right now. What really matters right now is we have to affirm each other. And I heard that in those opening remarks. I know from President Kim and the Board of Education, there is a real valuing of the professionals in this school district, and we want to affirm and elevate the impact that we can have on children and on communities and on the future of Oak Park. We want to prioritize our students' access to us. We, the professionals in this organization, are the ones who can really change students' lives. And so even in some everyday ways, I know that last spring, staff attendance and the ability to fill sub positions, all of this was an area of concern. It's certainly data that I'll be looking at. I want to understand what is happening and how we can stabilize so that every student comes to school to be greeted by a professional who has planned for awesome instruction for them. And I also want to watch the data to see when we have absences, are there particular groups of students that are being disproportionately impacted by that. Our parents send their students to school Monday through Friday, and not just to send them, of course, but to be affirmed and educated in really powerful ways. And so how do we make sure that that happens, and prioritizing that access to the excellence that exists in the school district in terms of teaching and learning. And then in everything that we want to do, we want to model a participatory approach. I know that the ability to figure out all that we need to figure out exists already within us. We have all the resources, we have all the knowledge, we have everything we need to do this well, but it will take creating new ways of being together and new models and new structures of all of us having our fingerprints on this work. And we also, in our practice, need to make sure that we're challenging ourselves at a fundamental level to have strong operational practices, making sure that we are using our time, people, money, technology in a high fidelity way that's focused on student success. So that is what I wanted to begin with. I can't wait to actually get out of my office and come to where you all are in the schools and get to know you, hear your responses to the kinds of things that I've shared. I love this picture. I met Renita Banks at a meeting not too long ago, and I asked her if I could have a picture of her sweatshirt. Let's not be at all unclear. Let's be perfectly clear about how important the work of teachers, of our office staff, of our custodians, of our food service workers, of our teacher assistants. Let's be perfectly clear that great public schools are about things that matter as a non-negotiable, which is that we exist in a vibrant participatory democracy. Those two things are connected. We are part of it, and it starts with you. It starts with all of us being motivators, believers, innovators, and educators. And I am grateful to be here with you. So thank you for this opportunity to serve together. And I will see you in person, not with a Zoom and not having to click around. I can't wait to meet you in your schools in person soon. Thank you.